In other words, if you bought gold or silver 2 or 3 years ago as a hedge against the stupidity and incompetence of those who were forging that, what was then the fascist model of banking, of state-sponsored banking, you would have been up. You would have seen your gold go to $2,000 an ounce by now. I mean, that's the value of to discount for the inflation that's had to have been injected into the system to pay off the bankers. But that hasn't happened. Why? Because it's not a free market, is it? The gold price is set on the back end. I sold my virtual specialist technology to Cantor Fitzgerald. Cantor Fitzgerald is a banker. It's a primary government dealer. They use the technology to set a price for government bonds. As I know that they do, as I know that they set the price for gold and they set the price for silver. So these prices are not moving based on supply and demand. They're not moving in any way other than what the cartel, the oligarchy, the Hank Paulson and his crew want them to go. The only way you and I or someone else can get ahead or make money is to gamble and to speculate. And so since the odds are very bad that this is going to work, you have millions and millions of people now falling into the petty crime, prostitution, and drug dealing. And this is what, of course, drug dealing, these are the high profit businesses. There's no higher profit business in the world than drug dealing, prostitution, and murder for hire. These are the highest margin businesses in the world. Doesn't it make sense then that the people who are obliterating the Sabres of the world are also running this sex, crime, drug cartel? Of course it does. Because this is their high-profit business. Why is it the opium crops in Afghanistan the highest they've ever been in history? Is it because America's winning the war on drugs? What's the deal in Colombia? Why suddenly is America interested in Colombia again? Is it to have better access to the drugs in Colombia? You bet your bottom dollar it is. Of course, because they're drug dealers. Why is this shadow banking system in America worth hundreds of billions and trillions of dollars? What goes through this shadow banking system? Why does it have to be so opaque? Is it because they're laundering drug money? Of course. People go back to the S&L crisis of the 80s, which I was working on Wall Street at the time. And there was a common knowledge that every Friday afternoon on Park Avenue, where I used to drink my champagne at a bar on Park in the 20s near Gramercy Park, there was a fleet of limousines that rolled into the basement of Citigroup, loaded up cash, and rolled out every Friday afternoon at 6 o'clock with a police escort. This was common knowledge. And this is the drug money. Now, that has not abated in any sense of the word. It's just gone global, and it's gone into hundreds of billions and trillions. And it's being siphoned off, and you've got this gulag state made of serfs on one hand and the lords on the other. And the Americans now are, why even bother talking about Americans? Who should we? The global community is, unfortunately, they've had their accounts decimated, 30, 40, 50%. Everything across the board is down. They have very little wherewithal to fight back now. So it's all a matter of survival, which again you get back to crime, drugs, petty thieving, which is and the black market. So you're going back to, as we've been saying, neo-feudalism. You're back into the forest where you've got lords and serfs, and anything outside of the castle walls is a complete no man's land of thieving, prostitution, and drugs. As we've been saying on the show, we've talked about every single bank and brokerage firm of major size for several years now, and as we pointed out, every single one of them is corrupt and engages in fraudulent activity. We made a film about it called Rigged Markets. We talked about the various ways these companies commit fraud, like backdating stock options or like backdating mutual fund trades. That was a major scandal. Just to name two out of dozens and dozens of ways we mentioned. So all the banks are engaged in larceny and fraudulent behavior, but you're saying Lehman Brothers is going to be the show trial. They're the Koroskovsky. Dick Fold is going to be the poster boy for, they're going to have the hate marches against Dick Fold, and he doesn't realize it yet.
Yep.
He thinks he's still going to get by like who's that Karl Rove character? He's just going to slip through.
Well, yeah, or he's going to be like the guy from, he's going to be like Ken Lay. Ken Lay got away. He's safe in Paraguay. But these guys, so Dick Fold will get the blame for the entire collapse. It'll be this guy, Lehman Brothers derivatives. Those were the ones, even though they had one of the smallest derivatives books.
Yeah.
Right? So compared to Bear Stearns, which was rescued. Bear Stearns had something like 7 times the derivatives book of Lehman Brothers.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the Ken Lay story because I mentioned Alex Jones on one of the commercial breaks when I was being interviewed on InfoWars.
Yeah.
The Ken Lay story. That Ken Lay was alive and living in Paraguay, and that we were making a film about it. And we did not talk about it on the air, but that was the information that, if you remember, I was saying was going to break some new information that we hadn't talked about.
Oh, yeah.
So, now we're breaking it on this show, that we have a film about Ken Lay being alive and living in Paraguay. And Alex Jones wanted to talk about it on his show. I told him that I wanted to get the details and get the film set up first and then break the story in his show. But maybe we should get Alex Jones on this again and get it over to his people. I'm in touch with his buddy Trey, who's his booker and producer. So if they're listening to the show, we might want to talk about it. Because as far as I know, nobody out there in the world of broadcasting has broken the story and talked about the fact that Ken Lay is alive and well and living in Paraguay. But as you can fill in the details, tell the people.
Remember, right before the Enron trials began, that Ken Lay was always very, very serenely confident. Then there was Jeff Skilling, who was buddies, he thought, with Ken Lay.
Yeah.
And remember, he had basically a nervous breakdown. He started going crazy. He was spotted several times in New York City and was actually arrested several times in New York City for having basically going ballistic and starting talking to himself and going crazy in the streets. And he was found drunk in the street several times.
I remember.
Because could be Dick Fuld soon. I think he could suddenly realize, just like Jeff Skilling did, is like, oh my God, my billions are not protecting me. Somebody's going to take the fall, and I know it's not Ken Lay. It's clearly me.
Well, you've been very good at predicting which men are going to kill themselves.
Yes, I haven't. I don't know.
And you think Dick Fuld is going to be like a Jeff Skilling-like character? Did Jeff Skilling kill himself, or is he in jail?
He's in jail.
Oh, but the other guy killed himself. The other Ken Lay guy, the chairman.
I forget the guy's name, but he was
murdered.
He was.
Washington, we've been listening to a lot of the hearings.
Yeah.
Here's the Dick Fuld testimony.
Yeah, this is just a Today in Washington Dick Fuld testimony. I just popped up on YouTube. And there's some white woman, that's going to talk about it. Maybe they get some.
Hold them to greater accountability, and we're seeing that today. Dick Fuld was the target of some very tough questioning. In his prepared remarks, he did put the blame for Lehman's collapse on rumors, out-of-date rules, and slow-to-act regulators. But in his verbal testimony to lawmakers, he was absolutely contrite, saying he accepted.
Okay, he's contrite.
Oh, that's a word that
sign.
you haven't seen since the Soviet times.
No.
I am contrite. I do believe in communism. I believe the great leader is our great leader.
He's being re-educated. So look, we should have a death pool. Name the day that Dick Fuld either commits suicide or murdered to make it look like suicide, and win 1 ounce of silver, a 1 ounce silver coin. If you can name the day that Dick Fuld is dead by either his own hand or a government hand, and you win 1 ounce of silver.
It's always it's always the 4th floor window,
right,
from a hotel.
That's right, because anything less doesn't guarantee death.
Exactly. And or in the car, they shoot themselves in the head in the car.
Right.
Now, if he dies of a heart attack, then he's actually in Paraguay.
Then he's in Paraguay with Ken Lay. So if you name the day, if you name the means and the conditions, it'll be 2 ounces of silver. Mm-hmm. So send us your guesses. That's info@maxkaiser.com. Info@maxkaiser.com. You could win up to 2 ounces of silver. This one here. That $850 billion bailout fund, 10% goes to paying bankers their bonuses.
Yes. Well, from just 6 banks alone in the U.S., including Goldman Sachs and Citibank, that of this $700 billion, remember $150 billion of that bailout is just pork to various like organizations around the U.S. So $700 billion goes to the banks, but $70 billion of that $700 billion is going to bonuses.
Yep, that's right.
That's remarkable, but no, it just isn't reported, I guess, in the U.S. press. Or to the U.S., certainly not on the network news. So everybody's absorbed in a Sarah Palin sort of whether or not she's inciting violence story. But in the meantime, there's violence being perpetrated upon your savings.